Our next guest favors a targeted travel ban to contain the spread of the coronavirus. Let's welcome Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. He serves as a member of the Banking, Intelligence, and Armed Services Committees. And Senator, thank you for being here today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Let's talk about this targeted travel ban. How would that work?
Well, that's exactly what the Trump administration did a couple weeks ago. I consulted widely with the president and his senior advisors, and I commend them for taking decisive action. We are currently excluding any foreign nationals who have been in China in the last 14 days, and for any Americans who have been in Wuhan or Hubei province itself, they're going to be quarantined for 14 days. It's only a prudent step to stop more than 20,000 persons traveling to our country from the Chinese mainland every day, given how many uncertainties there are about this very dangerous virus.
There was some pushback from the Chinese ambassador to the United States on some comments you made recently. I believe you suggested, at least, that the virus could have come from China's biological warfare program. The ambassador from China pushing back pretty strenuously against that. What do you think about his comments on this matter?
Well, first off, I would note that he didn't deny that China has been deceitful about the origins of this virus. There were reports in December and January that it started in a food market in Wuhan. We now know, based on conclusive evidence, that it did not start in that market. It went into the market, it came out of it. I don't know where it began. I do know that we need to get to the bottom of it, and we do need to ask the questions about the super laboratory that is in Wuhan. There are too many unanswered questions, and China has been too deceitful and too incompetent in managing this for us to just take the word of the Chinese Communist Party.
On that point, let's talk a little bit about some other news that came out this week. That's the 2017 Equifax cyber attack. Reports this week suggest that it was the People's Liberation Army in China and some of the Chinese intelligence agencies that were actually responsible for that attack. That would have come 2 years after they signed an agreement with the United States not to continue hacking or doing any cyber attacks. What do you make of that?
Well, I commend the Department of Justice for pursuing these indictments against officers of the People's Liberation Army. I have to say, as a member of the Intelligence Committee, it doesn't surprise me to know that China is targeting private companies with massive amounts of data like Equifax. We need to do more to deter China from these actions, though. We also need to continue to do more to hold China to its commitments. As you said, Xi Jinping stood in the Rose Garden with Barack Obama in 2015 and pledged not to undertake these kinds of attacks. That's one reason why it was so important that President Trump kept the tariffs on most Chinese products as part of the Phase 1 trade deal as a way to continue to demand that China uphold its commitments under that and other agreements.
The American business community has responded with relief, for the most part, to the idea that there is a trade truce with China on this front. We are waiting to see exactly how some of this plays out, and obviously with the coronavirus, that does change the trajectory of what you're seeing with some of the back and forth. But are you skeptical of these trade talks? Do you not believe the talks to this point? Do you not think things will improve?
I'm not skeptical of the talks. I'm skeptical of China's willingness to uphold their commitments. Again, that's why it was so important that the Trump administration did not remove the tariffs that it had imposed previously. It didn't go forward with more tariffs, but didn't remove the past tariffs until China begins demonstrated upholding of its commitments in these deals. But I think the Phase 1 trade deal was a step in the right direction. It's now incumbent upon China to deliver. Although, as you suggest, I'm afraid that the coronavirus could actually be the single biggest threat to both global and U.S. growth in this year.
Senator, I just want to go back to the comments from the Chinese ambassador to the United States. Over the weekend, he said it's very harmful, it's very dangerous to stir up suspicion, rumors, and spread them among the people. For one thing, this creates panic. Another thing is that it will fan up racial discrimination, xenophobia, and all these things that will really harm our joint efforts to combat the virus. Obviously, on the Intelligence Committee, you know more about what's happening. How firm are you in your concerns about this?
So I have two responses to the Chinese ambassador. One, the thing that really is harmful, that really spreads fear, is China lying about the origins of this disease and about the number of people who have it, and excluding American and other Western scientists from China to try to get to the bottom of it. Second, in terms of the claims of racism, the Chinese people are the first and the worst victims of the Chinese Communist Party. We should all hold them in our prayers and hope that we can get a vaccine, because they are the people who are most harmed by the Chinese government's incompetence and duplicity.
We spoke with a researcher from London earlier this morning who's already starting animal trials on a vaccination that they're working for, and he cited China with actually sharing that information and getting it faster than they have in some cases in the past. What would you say to that?
Grading on a very steep curve compared to what China has done in the past.
You mean with SARS?
I can promise you that the Chinese government is being far from cooperative with both the United States and other world-leading countries' scientists try to get to the bottom of this. If they wanted to get to the bottom of it, they would simply admit Western scientists into Wuhan so we could get to the bottom of it and hopefully get a vaccine as quickly as possible for our people and for the world.
What are your concerns on the coronavirus at this point? If the travel ban has kicked in, do you still have a heightened level of concern about this? How would you describe your thoughts?
I do. You know, the travel ban was an essential step to minimize the risk to the United States. But the first cases of this viral pneumonia appeared in early December, which meant it could have been incubating as early as mid-November. That means maybe 1.5 million people flew from China into the United States in that period of time. That's why our government is taking such an aggressive posture toward trying to identify persons who might have coronavirus and conduct contact tracing with people with whom they've come into contact, as well as pushing out testing kits to all 50 states. But it's also essential that we work with our partners around the world and the World Health Organization to err on the side of caution. When there's so much that is unknown still about this virus, an ounce of prevention truly is worth a pound of cure.
Scott Gottlieb, the former head of the FDA, wrote an op-ed this week that says, look, in Singapore, you've already seen this case get passed on to other people who have not traveled. That's his concern about what happens here next. What would it look like? How would we first find out that there was a situation like that here in the United States? Yeah,
that's a very worrisome development in Singapore, so-called community infections. People have not been in China or maybe not even have any clear connection to someone who has been in China. That's one reason why it's so important that Americans, if they get any symptoms that are flu-like, or certainly if they have any kind of viral pneumonia, that they and their doctors make sure that if they've been to China or if they've been anywhere around China, that public health authorities learn that quickly so we can hopefully get a handle on the United States before it expands beyond the 13 cases we have here now.
Jay Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, testifying before Congress this week. What are your biggest questions for him?
Well, one thing I think we should explore is the impact that coronavirus could have on the U.S. economy and also the prospect that it may require another rate cut sometime this year. I also want to speak, too, about what China has been doing to digitize its currency and the prospects for doing that with the U.S. dollar. Obviously, the dollar as the reserve currency is a great benefit for the prosperity and the security of Americans. That may be something, though, that we need to do to ensure that it remains the reserve currency of the world in the years ahead.